Welcome to the Asia Top 50 Women Tech Leaders Award podcast. My name is Grace Chung, the host of the award and of this podcast. Now, anecdotally, we know that there are many women technologists, but little is known about them. They are great technologists who are inventing new services and solutions and addressing business challenges. The award seeks to recognize these women and celebrate their achievements. In essence, this podcast wants to find out how business leaders go about ensuring gender diversity, especially in the senior ranks. With me today is Vinutha Rao, Senior Vice President of HCL Technologies, overseeing global digital business talent acquisition and development. Welcome to the show, Vinutha.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on this podcast.
Well, thank you for your time. I know you're very busy. Let's start straight away. What are the most significant barriers women face when it comes to career advancement? And how can businesses and business leaders address these challenges effectively?
Yeah, so in my view, there are two or three dimensions in terms of the barriers. First, I think first and the foremost is our socio-economical setup, or what we call it as our family constraints or choices or social pressures that we have. I think if we can actually compartmentalize into two or three buckets. One, I think in every country, this kind of, I would say, when it comes to career sacrifice because of family pressure or family situations, I would say,
Mm, mm,
it is skewed around women, right? So there's something that has come over the years, and it's only slowly changing, and it may take us a while for us to really be in an ideal situation,
mm,
and maybe we can do less about it, right? So I mean, there's something that one as an individual you cannot change, or maybe as an organization also our influences on these could be very minimum in my view. Okay, but I think every woman has to strive to bring a difference, so that the next generation at least would have lesser pressure in terms of how do we create a balance in doing some kind of a family choices when the situation demands, and what kind of arrangements that we can do, right? So that's one segment of it, and the second
mm,
dimension to it is, in my view, is about um, you know the institutional barriers, right? So or institutional bias is what I can say, which is it comes back to gender stereotyping, or what we call it as unconscious bias, or the perception that entire community has around, that women can only do these kind of roles, or women possibly are not flexible because they cannot travel, and or it could be a perception that women cannot take pressure when it comes to possibly certain very executive kind of roles. So there are certain stereotyping or possibly a unconscious bias that is there, which needs to be looked at, and again, this is something that has to be fading out through conscious attempts from every section, whether it is from the organizational side or from an individual side, is how do we actually minimize this. When you actually open up a role for a leadership position, can I kind of make it gender neutral? And secondly, do I have the right counsel to ensure that we are not biased, saying that a particular individual may not be able to do this due to lack of global pressure, or sorry, I would say lack of global exposure, or being at the right place at the right time. If you are underrepresented as a community, like
mm,
as women community, there should not be a bias saying that, okay, you know there are no representations in terms of positioning them at the right place. In other words, I would say lack of sponsorship, lack of being in the right network. So some of these institutional bias and institutional mindset needs to be changed. That's another dimension. This also actually acts as I would say a limitation in terms of growth of a woman. And third, I think the most important thing, which is in every woman's hand, which is our own mindset. I
mm,
think we have kind of I think have a mindset that let me declare I'm good only when my team performs as good as me, or possibly how much our team performs, let me rate myself as as good as that. But if you look at men, right, so they always rate themselves better than even the achievement of their team that they're managing. So essentially it's about we're shying in terms of giving visibility to our own achievement, in terms of our ability to show that I can take the risk, or what we call it as a risk appetite, in terms of showing that I'm ready for the role without underestimating our own selves. What like our own barriers in our mind needs to be removed. I think these some of these challenges are possibly are critical in my view, which are acting as a hindrance in terms of our career growth.
But thank you for those insights. I just want to pick up one thing that you said about unconscious bias. Is
Mhm.
this something that can be trained? Can you put your leaders through it and say, this is how you get over this hump?
Yeah, so see what happens. I mean, I think I let me take take an example here. um, Generally what happens is, and when women are in around 28 to 35, they kind of go slow in their career, right,
Mhm.
because of family balancing. And then that's a social that's the way the setup is, right? So both biological and social setup. Now this is when I think most of the women lose out on their promotions,
Mhm.
because generally there is a tendency that if you're doing a part time, or if you're not able to stretch your working hours, the promotions are generally not considered, right? That's the way it is. I would say this is a unconscious bias that happens in the system.
Right.
And now that you come back with full speed, when you're in 40s, but you may not be at the same level as possibly your men colleagues are, who would have started at the same same time, and you possibly have missed out on some of the global exposures, or possibly you might have missed out of some of the networking positions. I think what can one do. So this is where unconscious bias sets up, saying that, okay, hey, this particular person has not really seen all the faces, and possibly at not at the right place, and
Right.
hence maybe not ready. Now that may or may not be true, right? So if with good mentorship, and I would say good sponsorship, sometimes you possibly are mentoring more than required, and what you need at that point is a lack sponsorship. And if we can actually take a conscious call of having a leadership council, saying that who has got the skill to do a particular job,
Mhm.
and who can actually scale up to a particular role, if we kind of form this process in a very objective way, possibly we can remove some of the stereotypes, or what we call it as an unconscious bias that exists in system. I took that as an example. So several in several places we can actually bring in some kind of process or method in terms of removing this unconscious bias.
All right. So is mentoring more important, or is it sponsorship that's more important?
It depends on the juncture, career juncture. I think at mid career level, in my view, it's more about mentoring a person. It doesn't matter whether it is women or men, just to really give them the right exposure, right breadth of the knowledge. But
Mhm.
when it comes to executive level, I think sponsorship is as much as required as more, I would say more than the mentorship, because you need to believe in the leader that you're, going kind of sponsoring. You need to have a clear understanding of why and how you can sponsor a person, which will definitely help, especially when it comes to gender neutrality.
Right. Okay. When it comes to talent acquisition,
Mhm.
often I don't think the male managers want to just hire all men. I think they want to hire the right person. But here comes, I want to hire a logistics manager, for example, and these are my specifications and requirements. And HR meets those requirements, and then hence a short list of three, but all male names, all men. So as a manager, what do you do? She would say, hey, Mr. HR or Miss HR, can you please go and make sure that out of these three, I have at least one woman?
Um, I think we'll have to take one step back, right? So at
Yeah.
the time of selection, I guess it is very hard to really impose something, because you are actually in line with the business demand, business urgency, and so many other factors. I think this goes back to planning. I think at least certain today we have to accept the fact that there is a gender diversity gap, right? I mean gender gap. So when we have accepted this, I think it is very important for us to insert it in the planning session
Right.
section, that these are some of the roles we have to mandatorily do at a diversity level. We have to ensure that certain percentage has to be there while acquiring the talent. And secondly, I think when you carve out certain leadership roles, you have to make sure that the job description or role description has to be gender neutral. There should not be elements like, hey, x number of years uh, only traveling or doing roles, or on-site roles. I think if we can minimize some of these things and purely look at the skill and the ability and the competency in your job description, I think that will help a lot. Getting the right applications, I think once you receive the right number of applications, involving all genders, I think then making a choice systematically is easier. That's the way I look at it in terms of acquiring. So my suggestion to managers, coming back to your question, is that be clear on the role descriptions, which is which should be gender neutral, and it should be in a way to accommodate applicant who has the real potential.
Right. Thank you. Just one last question. From your career, I think you have, many years of experience. Can you share a tip or a guide for our women listeners there who, to tell them how they can give themselves a boost up in their career development?
The first and the foremost, I think it's about getting the priorities right. And at every juncture, there will be always something which is more important, like how you do a project plan, right? So similar to that. And second, I guess, to not be risk averse. Um, Even if you have not done certain particular role, but it interests you, I think if you think that you have the skill set and you can bridge the skill gap, if any exists, still you should opt for such a role and take that role, because everybody has a learning. And today, be it a technological role or be it on any other role, it's what you did yesterday doesn't work, and you have to evolve. And when it is a new learning ground, you are an equal competent as long as you have the zeal and passion for it. Okay. And most importantly, do not underestimate yourself, and tap your own potential to the fullest. And when you do that, I guess you get that passion, I think, to deliver the best. And if you're delivering your best, I'm sure you'll be on the leadership path and enhancing your career journey. And finally, success is, what is good for me and what is good for you are very, very different. And I think it's a state of mind of what we call, and for me, success is about being at peace, which means I know for sure that I have delivered the best. Despite that, something goes wrong, it is fine, but I have done the best. And the success is a peace of mind for me, and for you, something else. So do not try to kind of compare that. Okay, I have not achieved certain things because I've not met something. What is important to you? If you have met that, I think you are successful, and that should be your guiding factor.
Thank you, Vinutha. Very useful
Yeah,
insights for our women listeners. Well, for
yeah.
those listening to us, please go to asiawomentech.com and listen to the podcast on women technologies who have been an inspiration to all of us. We would like to thank again Vinutha for her time, and to HCLTech, the presenter for the Asia Top 50 Women Tech Leaders Award. Tune in again for our conversations with women technologist leaders.